Now, we're all told that we need to listen to our customers, but what if you're not actually meeting them? That's the challenge for most of us because we're trying to get people to our websites, build lead funnels. Maybe we're on podcasts, for example. So how do you listen to customers that you can't see? Well, my guest today is going to help us to answer that question because he's the Chief Revenue Officer for a company called ScoreApp, which is one of the world's leading quiz providers and really helps entrepreneurs around the world and content creators to listen to their customers and get them warmed up and ready to sell. Maxwell Nee, welcome. Joining us from Singapore.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're more than welcome because I'm a big fan of ScoreApp. And obviously, we've got Daniel Priestley here with his key person of influence, has created a huge reputation for himself, but also for ScoreApp. So I'm looking forward to hearing about ScoreApp, but also I've got some questions because I personally haven't succeeded with ScoreApp. And so I'm going to ask you some questions that I'm hoping you can answer for me because I'm sure that many entrepreneurs would love to use quizzes, but they've got some practical questions to answer. So Maxwell, first of all, tell us a little bit about, your background with ScoreApp, which now has over 6,000 customers, doesn't it? But when you started, how many did it have?
Zero. Pretty much zero. Yeah. Well, when I invested, yeah.
Yeah. So that's so you've been at the beginning, which is fantastic. Yeah. So tell us about your story with ScoreApp and then what problems it's solving now.
Yeah, good question. So I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for ScoreApp. So my responsibility is to share it with as many people as possible who might benefit from using our software. Now, our software, our solution, we have about 6,000 plus clients right now who are coaches, consultants, service providers, online entrepreneurs, authors, content creators like the ones that you see now. Ali Abdaal, Helen, Christo, Jay Shetty. People with millions and millions of people on their followers, audiences, and what we do is we help all of them to generate leads. Right now, what's a lead? A lead is someone that's put their hand up and they've said, "Hey, Jim, I really like what you have to offer. I'm potentially interested to buy what you have to sell." Right. So that's a lead. You want to know as many of those people as possible because when you have a big abundance of leads, then sales and everything else, business growth is easier than harder. Right. Now, how do we do that? Like, how do we help people to generate leads? It's all based on the principle of a win-win, right? So if you want someone to put their hand up and to give you their information, their name, their phone number, their email, sometimes even where do they live, to let you know, hey, look, Jim, I'm happy for you to call me if to see if it's a fit for me to buy your service, then you need to offer them something for them to be willing to give you that, right? Now, ScoreApp helps you to offer them what we call a quiz funnel. So a quiz funnel is where they answer a series of questions, could be 5, could be 10, could be 40. And at the end of those questions, that survey, that assessment, they will get a personalized report, right, which will help them to measure where they are now and where they want to go. So it could be, for example, do the podcast readiness scorecard, right? So how ready are you to get a podcast out in the audience today? And, Mr. Customer might be 3 out of 10 ready. So then, Jim, you would have a very problem-solving conversation to potentially call Mr. Customer and say, hey, look, Mr. Customer, I've seen that you're a 3 out of 10 in terms of podcast readiness. How would you like it if I could share with you some ideas to get from 3 to 10? And then you go from there. So that's one example of a use case that most people use.
So you've mentioned that it can be used for sort of a quiz funnel. My experience with the quiz was that I don't know how to ask the right questions, Maxwell. And I think this is one of the fundamental challenges because I've introduced quizzes and ScoreApp specifically to a number of my clients on the coaching side. Most of us fall down on what questions to ask and how to ask them. So do you want to take us through maybe what makes a great quiz? Because this seems to be the challenge, to not make it too salesy, to make it so that someone feels that they're getting something out of it. On the other hand, you don't feel like you want to give away what you're selling. So how do you sort of reconcile that?
Yeah, well, let me start by giving you the magical pill solution first. So the magical pill solution is, semi recently we've incorporated ChatGPT into the platform, where it'll prompt you to pull out, who you serve, how you help them, what's the goal of your quiz, what you'd like it to be, and then the AI wizard will write your concept and your copy about 6 to 7 hours worth for you. So that's the shortcut on the map. But in terms of what that AI actually does, what it does is that it speaks to an outcome. No one wants to do a quiz. They want the outcome, right? What's the outcome? The outcome is find out what, type of entrepreneur you are, find out what type of body type you are, for your personal training goals, find out your podcast readiness, find out how much a podcast could benefit your business. So people want to know like a personalized outcome for their specific problem. So it speaks to a problem and then it identifies an outcome.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you that I have one, and it's called "How Do You Rank as a Podcast Guest? 10 Questions with Instant Answers," Maxwell. So I am actually drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm really trying this as well. When you talk about outcomes, how do you get into the mind of the person that you're trying to pull through that funnel? Because one of the challenges is you don't know sort of maybe where they're coming from in terms of their customer journey. You don't necessarily know what they're looking for when they arrive on your website. And I think that's certainly something that I found as a challenge is, where do I start with the questions? The AI was great, but what I also struggled with was, are those the right questions? They're great questions, but are they the right questions? How do I kind of test or check if I'm asking the right questions?
Well, the questions should just represent the outcome, right? So I think the more prudent question is your outcome what your clients are willing to pay for? As long as the answer to that question is yes, the outcome that your quiz is offering is something that your clients are willing to pay for, to get to a 10, to get to a yes, to get to a 100% satisfaction, then the questions are secondary. The questions can float around that, and they don't need to be that that well written.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So if you focus on the outcome that you're trying to get for them, and then you're trying to identify, if you like, for them where they're at on that journey against the outcome that they want to get. And what are you finding are the best? Is it to do sort of a yes/no questions, or is it ABC? Is there any guidance there, Maxwell, on the kind of questions that people should be asking? I know you said that the question is less important, but is there an impact? Because one of the challenges I think that I found with my clients is we've ended up feeling like we need to become experts at writing questions. And is that something that we need to really be worried about?
No, I wouldn't say you need to become an expert, but think about it like this: when you or anyone else is in a discovery conversation, so like a sales conversation, a chemistry call, discovery call, that call where you're talking to a potential client as to whether or not they want to work with you. All the questions you ask in the first 15 minutes of that call are the same questions that will work in your quiz. So everyone is already asking these questions because you would need to ask them in a sales and a discovery call situation to work out if you can help this person.
Okay, that's a really, really good piece of guidance, because I think that's one of the challenges that most of us have faced is we love the idea of the quiz, but then we feel like we've got to become quiz builders. And as you say, if you're basically taking people, if you like, through your normal kind of needs analysis part of your conversation, right? You've got some pretty impressive size sort of content creators in there, like people like Jay Shetty. Can you give us maybe some examples of how maybe someone like Jay's using it, using ScoreApp?
Yeah, so he's using like multiple ones. So he might have a video where the video is about purpose, right? You know, like, are you living your purpose? Is your battery charged? Is your cup full? As if you're living your highest purpose. And then he'll have measure your purpose scorecard, right? That's in tandem of that video. It's a call to action for that video. So, or he might have one about work-life balance, as an example, and then we'll have the work-life balance scorecard. Measure your work-life balance happiness score, or the happiness one. Really simply. So it really is just like that specific outcome or that specific nugget. Like, you don't want to have "I'm going to fix everything in your life" quiz. You just want to have that one product on the shelf that they could buy, and then theme it around that.
Okay, and you've mentioned there something that I'd like to sort of dive into a little bit, which is, where do you put the quiz? That's the next part. So let's say you've built the quiz and you're trying to get an answer to one key question, which is also really good guidance, because I think I've probably overcomplicated my quiz to try and find out too many things at once. What about where do you propose or recommend that people are collecting these answers from?
So it doesn't really matter where people are collecting these answers from, but the exposure you want is really anywhere, right? So people put them in their email signatures. People put them as a call to action on a video, on an Instagram post, on an Instagram story, a Facebook post. People post them as their own posts on LinkedIn or Facebook. Obviously you can run ads to it as well. So there's about 10 places you can throw it on there for free to start bringing in interest. Another thing is discussion groups, right? So like a Facebook group or WhatsApp group is also a really good place. The idea of the quiz is that you're not there to bother people by trying to extract information out of them. You're there to offer them a piece of value, because when they get that personalized report, which is the outcome of the quiz, that's going to help them in their journey. So you're not asking questions, you're actually giving out reports, and the questions are just like a means to an end.
And I think that's a really great distinction, that you're using the ScoreApp to serve rather than to sell, Maxwell, from what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a really, really useful distinction as well, because I think that changes the stress that you put yourself under in terms of trying to build the killer quiz. You're really trying to build something that helps people along their journey. You talk about the customized response, Maxwell. And by the way, just for anybody, Maxwell's actually got a book on building the great ScoreApp. So at the end, we're going to give you a link, the Scorecard Marketing book, which is on my list of books to read, I can tell you. So at the end, we're going to give out a link to a free hard copy, I think, right, Maxwell? We can actually send people the copy of the book.
If you're based in the UK, we can definitely get a hard copy out to you. If you're not, then we might have to get a PDF out to you. But we'll share that link in the show notes.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's absolutely fantastic. Maxwell, let's just move the workflow forward. So we've got our quiz. We've understood that it's really solving or helping someone to answer one question and understand where they are on the journey, give them some guidance, some inspiration. What would be in the customized report? Let's just go into that level of detail. What would be in that customized report that someone would receive when they've answered those questions?
Yeah, so there's a few different categories. So there might be categories that are measured on a scale. So it might be, a percentage score. You're 72% to achieving that goal, that outcome. You're 32%. Here's how to get from 30 to 100. Here's how to get from 70 to 100. And then the other one is where you put people into buckets, right? So there might be a personality quiz, and there's 5 key personalities, right? The entrepreneur personality quiz, and you could be one of 5. So that's another example as well. Or there could be a mixed rating where there is 5 personalities, but you might be 75% of one and 25% of another. So you can actually go into that type of detail as well.
Okay. My experience with the writing of the report, the content management system on the back of ScoreApp is really very elegantly built. So congratulations to the team. I think Steve Odie, is leading that development team, I think. Is that right? Is it Steve's team?
Yeah. So Steve's the CEO. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can also customize the report according to some dynamic content, can't you? So it's not just a standard report. Each question can give a response that's aligned to the question that people were being asked. So you can really get very granular, can't you, Maxwell, in terms of the report that you give people, which I think is really very handy. And then people are receiving that report. Where are they receiving that? They're receiving the report online, or they're getting it as a download? How are people actually receiving that material?
Yeah, so they'll get it through an email, and then it'll also, they can obviously download it from the email as well.
So people have got quizzes, and there's I won't, you're in charge of selling, but I will say there's a free version so people can start and learn. And but what would you say are some of the best practices that you've seen for people in terms of building a quiz into the overall marketing? Because it doesn't stand alone, does it? Do you think people need to be offering the quiz as part of a promotion, or is it just on the website? What have you seen as being the best way to integrate the quiz into part of an overall marketing strategy, Maxwell?
Yeah, so the quiz is a conversion event. So it converts a listener. So it's great for podcasts. It converts a viewer. So it's great for videos. It converts, paid traffic. But there has to be traffic. So anywhere where you've got traffic going to a paid website, an email, or whatever, that's where you've got eyeballs going towards something. Then you want to make sure you're not missing out on those viewers or listeners converting into, a lead.
Right, and that's key, isn't it? That is part of it's part of a chain, part of a conversation, isn't it? It's part of the customer journey, as opposed to an orphan activity. It needs to be part of something, doesn't it? Exactly. With the ScoreApp, what about if people are working across geographies and across languages, Maxwell? Because that's something, my audience, I have listeners all over the world. In fact, we're very, very blessed. Is ScoreApp working in multiple languages? How do you help people to handle that?
Yeah, so it is, and the AI wizard as well also works in multiple languages. So some of our, so we have partners who share ScoreApp, and some of our partners that generate the most interest sharing ScoreApp only share in French or Dutch. So yeah, it does very well in all languages.
Yeah, that's great, because so many companies are crossing boundaries, crossing geographies, right? That we need to integrate whatever we do across platforms and across geographies as well, which is fantastic. And in this age of, TikTok and so on, is there a way to make the Score app and the quiz as a video? How do you embed the Score app, for example, you mentioned, into Instagram? Is it a link only, or do you in some way help people to to make it a bit more dynamic.
Yeah, it's a link only.
Right.
Link only, but it's a link to a page, to a landing page. So you can incorporate that page into a website. You can incorporate it into an email. And into an image. So it's a landing page.
Okay, and let's just think of, we look at the whole sort of chain. We've looked at the kind of quizzes we create. We've created the event where we help someone to understand where they're at with their journey. We've looked at distribution. What about integration? Because people have got a CRM, maybe they're running HubSpot, maybe they've got a website on WordPress. They're using a mailing application like so many of us. We have all these different platforms. With ScoreApp, if I'm collecting those email addresses from people that have entered, how would I then use ScoreApp to be part of my overall, if like, sales engagement process?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Would you like to double your salary without starting another business? The easy way to do this is to join the board of another company. You get well paid for a part-time role. You get all the credibility that comes with being a board member. Plus, you get to hang out with some very cool people and learn how other businesses are dealing with their problems. If you'd like to know more, if you'd like to learn how you get your first board seat within 60 days, just click on the link below, as Unnoticed is a gold sponsor of our summit, so you get free tickets. Enjoy. I'll see you there.
Yeah, so it collects leads. You can also use it as CRM. So you could hold the leads there, the emails, the names, phone numbers. You could then plug that into, for example, an email automation software that sends out emails, or you could plug it into Zapier if you want, a bit more exotic type of integrations. So you definitely have options, yeah.
Okay, that's really handy then, is it? Because you don't want to build another silo of leads somewhere. And I think also, does it help in terms of writing emails against the answers as well? Or do people have to go in and sort of write and follow up with when people have got a score?
Ask me that question again.
Oh, so when people have filled in the quiz and we're seeing their results, then you want to follow up, obviously, with the person who's filled in the quiz. So just sort of completing that whole process, Maxwell. I can see the results that someone's filled in. What's best practice? How does ScoreApp help us to reach out to that person? Because that's not the end in itself. The quiz is, you say, an event to get them to convert. So what about the outreach? We've talked about the mass mailing integration, but is there a way as well for ScoreApp to help people to the owner of the ScoreApp to write directly to those people who've taken the quiz?
Yeah, so you can automate that, right? That's just like an email, but it depends on your business model. So if you've got a business model where your product is a bit more higher ticket and a bit more higher touch, then you might want to consider calling that person or sending them a link for them to book a call with you. That's what worked well in one of my businesses in the past. But if your product is a bit more mass market, then yeah, you've got the perfect source of data to start sending out personalized and targeted emails.
Right. And then, so in terms of the future and where you see this going in terms of quizzes, Maxwell, how do you see businesses using quizzes in the future? I mean, obviously, you've integrated AI already into ScoreApp. How do you see businesses, coaches, and so on using quizzes more and more in their business?
So it's all about what gives you an advantage, right? Now, we've found that when people use ScoreApp, let me start here. So a typical conversion rate on a landing page, whether you ask someone for their email for like a 10% discount, or you ask them for their email to receive an ebook or PDF or something like that, typically converts at about 10 to 15%. So 10 to 15% of people that look at that opportunity will action it. Now, with ScoreApp, we're seeing conversion rates of 20 to 40%. So that's a big bump in the numbers, which then gives you more opportunities as a business owner.
Yeah, that's massive, isn't it? And you're seeing that bump presumably worldwide, because ScoreApp, you have clients around the world. So that's a massive uplift, isn't it? Especially considering once you've set ScoreApp up, it really, I don't want to say low maintenance, but the platform really does the work for you, doesn't it? Each time you don't have to keep recreating the content, so it's very efficient.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of yourself, Maxwell, you're obviously an investor and you're an entrepreneur based in Singapore. What are some of the pieces of advice that you would give us as an entrepreneur about what you think really helps to move the needle from, building a business?
Oh, it's a good question. So after going through the journey of building something from scratch a few times, I definitely only now get involved in businesses where I've got an advantage. That advantage, and the best advantage to have is, in my opinion, a distribution channel. So I will, if I could pick between 20 businesses, I'd pick the one with the distribution channel. I wouldn't even look at anything else. I wouldn't look at how much the others cost. I wouldn't look at the industry or the whether or not it has tech involved or whatever. I would look at the distribution channel available, because for me that's the ultimate risk management, right? And also I look at businesses very differently now. So I don't look at them as in terms of what's the upside. Like I don't look at it as more sales, more numbers, more dollar signs. I look at it as what could I execute with almost what feels like zero risk. So that is, for me, the ultimate advantage, and in many ways, another way to look at it is what could I execute with an arbitrage, so like a risk-free win, and then just do that over and over and over again.
That's interesting. So I had one chap, Cody Snyder, on the show, and he talked about distribution being more important than product in his view.
100%. So that guy and I would be best friends.
Yeah, he runs a company called Swell AI, which is helping to take podcast content and make it into articles and so on. So that's fascinating, Maxwell. That's your view. So you're actually only the second person out of all my interviews. Cody was one, and you're the second person to really talk about the impact of distribution, and that really is the core differentiator now. Why do you think that's so important? Why is distribution now more important than product?
I think it's always been, and if you look at the most successful, some of the best entrepreneurs in the world, they have, how they solve this problem is what made the difference. So I'll give you an example. I'm writing a book about this. I'm so passionate about it. It's almost finished. Now, so Steve Jobs, right? So Steve Jobs is well known as one of the most product-obsessed entrepreneurs ever to walk the planet. However, when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, the first thing he did before he built the iPhone is he went to AT&T. And he went to AT&T and he said, look, there's a problem with your business model. They said, no, there isn't. We're X $1 billion company. And then he said to AT&T, there is, because you sell minutes. Now, the problem with selling minutes is that there's only 1 minute in a minute. And then he said, I'm going to create a device for you that's going to sell more data per every minute, currently possible. And, that device is known as the iPhone. So he went and secured that distribution through, one of America's largest telcos, gave them an upside revenue model that they couldn't say no to, and then he built the product thereafter.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. Of course, the Bill Gates story with the Windows OS going to IBM and getting that on there. So absolutely right. And of course, now with ScoreApp, people, in terms of coming back to ScoreApp and distribution, how can people get ScoreApp, Maxwell? Let's bring it back as well to what you were going to kindly offer to people. So how can people get hold of ScoreApp, and how can they get hold of this amazing book that you've kindly offered?
Yeah, so let me share some of the details, right? So this book, Scorecard Marketing, written by my business partner, Daniel Priestley, it walks you through how to use this method to create better leads and bigger profits in your industry, in your business. You'll go to this page here that Jim's pulling up, and the URL is ScoreApp, ScoreApp.com/book. If you're in the UK, we'll get a physical copy out to you. If you're not, we might need to get a PDF out to you, but just register there and then we'll go from there. And if you did go ahead with using our software, our solution, there's multiple tiers and there's a free version that you could start with. So you really got nothing to lose to get going and start generating leads for your business.
Maxwell, it's very generous. And it says here physical copies can be sent to the UK, US, and Canada.
Yeah.
So we might have to add Singapore on the list, I think, as you're there now. Get you connected to people in Singapore as well. Maxwell, that's wonderful. I do have a final question for all my guests, and that's a book or a podcast that you're going to recommend to me and to my fellow unnoticed entrepreneurs.
Yeah, wow, it's a good question. So, one book that I keep coming back to that I love to read, and I rarely read a book twice because I only read essentially business books, is called Outsiders. So it's called Outsiders, and it's about, I think, 7 or 9 CEOs who generated outsized returns for their companies. They were all publicly listed companies, so the return is measured in shareholder value. And what's very interesting about this book and these CEOs is that pretty much none of them, except for 1 or 2, had Harvard MBAs, right? Had MBAs. Pretty much none of them had typical C-suite experience. Pretty much none of them went through any other type of business textbook journey to get to that point and to achieve that. And they all outperformed the textbook version, who in the book, I think they compare it against Jack Welch when he was at GE. They outperformed him by like 15x.
Wow. It's called Outsiders?
Outsiders,
Outsiders.
So it's not to be confused with Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Outsiders. And all the backgrounds of these gentlemen was mathematicians or engineers.
Okay, perfect. We'll have to get the author's name, and we'll put that in the show notes, because there is a novel as well called The Outsiders, I think. So we will, of course, get Maxwell's author there as well for you. Maxwell, if people want to get hold of you personally, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm addicted to LinkedIn. So you could pretty much always get a hold of me on LinkedIn. So Maxwell Nee is my name, and I'm the only one on there with that name, so I should be pretty easy to find. Great.
That's Nee, N-E-E. Okay.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. Maxwell, thanks for joining me all the way from Singapore. I know I've taken you through the nitty-gritty of ScoreApp and the quizzes, and you've got a role as Chief Revenue Officer, so I know that you're dealing in bigger conceptual and bigger sales than that, but normally. So I appreciate you sort of dealing with some of the details, because for those of us that are sort of trying to implement these smaller solutions that make such a difference to our business, it's been really useful to get from you what really is going to make it work in our businesses. So thanks so much for agreeing to come on the show to explain it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, we've been listening to Maxwell Nee, who has shared the journey with ScoreApp from 0 to 6,000 customers, which is an amazing story. It only started in 2019. So in 5 years, it's grown exponentially. But also listening that we can increase the conversion rate from 5 to 10 on a website to up to 40% by using a quiz, really by listening to people that come to our websites or to our social media platforms using the ScoreApp, means that this is really such an amazing opportunity to embed this within our marketing strategy. So go to scoreapp.com and sign up for a free account. You've really got nothing to lose and so much to gain. And get the book, because that's going to help you to understand how to gain it. So you've been listening to me, Jim James. Thank you so much for joining me on the Unnoticed Entrepreneur Show again. And until we meet again, I just encourage you to keep on communicating.